I just finished my summer workshops and it feels great to be back home. But in today's video, I have a Photoshop full editing tutorial where we cover the entire process from frequency separation, dodge and burn, and color grading. Now, I do want to thank you all for voting. You all voted on this image. And believe it or not, I stress out. I never know which image to work with in this series. So those of you that participated, thank you all so much. Remember, I post a raw file in the description. So if you want to edit along with me, go ahead and download that. You'll find that in the description. And make sure you wait until the end because I'm going to show you how to actually get the color grading that I achieved. And I'm going to give that away for free. Now, keep in mind, in this series, this is more of an intermediate tutorial. So if you're a beginner or you're new into Photoshop, don't worry, si se puede con Infante. I have plenty of beginner level tutorials that go slower, step-by-step process that cover everything from skin retouching, dodge and burn, frequency separation, color grading, and how I save for Instagram. So now is a great time to subscribe to the channel because I post a lot of educational content. Now, let's go ahead and cover todo el pedo. By the way, it means the whole shebang. All right, now that we're in Photoshop, my first step is always to remove the distractions. I see a couple of distractions here on the ground, so I'm going to use the patch tool, and I'm going to just simply circle around here, and I'm going to put my cursor inside just to remove some of these, I guess, trash that was on the ground here. And let me go ahead and get rid of that. So now that we got that out of the way, what I want to run is my frequency separation and dodge and burn action. So when I run this, the first thing it's going to ask me is, what medium do you want to use? Basically, what I want to do is I want to separate the texture and the color here on this step. So what I want to do is I want to move around this image and I want to make sure that I don't see the texture on the face. Now, this number is going to be different on an image to image basis, but I also want to look at the flyaways. We're going to be removing the flyaways in the image as well as this string. So this also helps. So believe it or not, 18 looks good. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 18. So what's cool about this action is that I already have everything nice and neat. It's already color coded for you all. It basically has the assist layers. So right now I don't need the assist layers. I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And what I want to focus on first is the frequency separation. I want to focus on the blemishes. And in order to edit the blemishes, I need to make sure that I'm on the texture layer. If I go to the color backup layer and I hold Alt, you'll see that the color has been separated. There is no texture. So in order to remove the blemishes, I'm going to use the patch tool. You can use the clone stamp, the healing brush, or the spot healing brush. Use whatever tools works best for you. There's no right or wrong here. But what you're going to see me do is I'm going to use the patch tool. And the reason why I like this tool is that when I circle around the blemish, I can simply move my cursor and get a preview of what the texture is going to look like when it blends. So this is why I like using the patch tool. Use whatever tool works best for you. But on this first step here, that's what you're going to see me do. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this. And you're going to just basically see me go around and just remove the blemishes. And then we're going to get into the flyaways and go ahead and remove those. All right, now that I've removed the blemishes from the face, now I'm going to go ahead and move to the flyaways. There's a couple that are bothering me here, this one in particular, and maybe this one here. I'm not going to remove all of them because then it's going to make it look a little bit weird. So I do like to keep some of the flyaways in the image. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see what the patch tool looks like. So I'm going to try with the patch tool. Patch tool is looking, let's see if I go right about here. That looks good. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing now. I'm just going to be going into the flyaways now. All right, now that I have the flyaways removed and the blemishes, now we're going to move into the color backup layer. Now I was working with that briefly for the little string on the pants there. And basically now what this means is I'm going to be able to manipulate only the color in the image. I'm going to use the mixer brush to kind of push and manipulate some of this color around the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into my layers, color backup. I'm going to switch now to my mixer brush. All right. And I've been experimenting with some new settings. So if you've seen my other videos, I've had different numbers. Now I'm trying 60, 50, 50, and 50 now. And I think it's important to experiment and try different things and different numbers, because sometimes you might find that these numbers might work best. So now this is where I'm actually going to come back to my assist layers now. And I'm going to set it up to black and white, because what I want to use the mixer brush for is I want to speed up my dodge and burn process. So I know I want to mix this color. I'm going to push some of this color up for the eye bag here, push some of this color in, lighten up this little area here, and then kind of tone this down as well, this shadow. I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm just going to kind of tone it down. So now I'm going to go into the color backup, make sure I have my brush selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some of this color, and then I'm just going to push it up and kind of massage it in ever so slightly. Okay. And I'm doing this process slow. I don't want to push too much color because I do want to retain a lot of the structure of the face. All right. So I'm just doing this slowly, and I've already quickly, if I look at this eyeball right here, if I take this color backup layer off and on, I've already reduced that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make sure my cursor is in the lighter area, and I'm just going to push this color over. And if you're new to frequency separation, by the way, as I mentioned, I do have beginner level tutorials where I talk about this and I break it down in a much slower pace. So if you're looking at this like, what in the world is he talking about? Feel free to check out that video. I'll have it linked in the description. So I'm just toning down some of these shadows and this one right here. All right, so I'm going to kind of look around the other parts of the image. I'm going to maybe go into the chin. And so basically what you're going to see me do is just reduce some of these shadows, not removing it, but just toning it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll move into dodge and burn. Now you'll notice here I'm going into the area of the hand, and we have the veins. I want to tone that down, so I'm doing that same thing with the mixer brush. I'm going to grab some of this color here, and I'm just going to push this across. That'll reduce that shadow ever so slightly. So I don't want to get rid of all of the veins there on the hand, but I obviously want to tone it down. It's all about finding that right balance. So once again, I'm just coming through here. And I might even, you know what, let me try the lasso method where I select this and I go to filter, blur, and then Gaussian, and that'll flatten it out just a little bit. Okay, so that's another method you can do, is get the lasso tool like you see that I did there. Make a lasso selection, make sure that the feathering is about 15, 20 or so, and then go into Gaussian blur. And if we look at the preview here, just kind of reducing some of those shadows and those veins there. So I'm going to put it at a lower number. I don't want to go too crazy here, but just reducing it down, and that should be better. All right. Now, the other thing that I want to do is you'll notice that the shirt has a lot of wrinkles on here. So I can also use frequency separation to kind of tone down these. So because it's on the color layer, you'll see that let me actually edit this image like this with the texture off. You see, I can manipulate some of these shadows, and I can push things, and I can go crazy here, right? Obviously, that's not what we want to do there, right? But the point is I can definitely manipulate some of these shadows and kind of smooth some of these shadows out with this color layer. So I'm still with the mixer brush, and I'm going to go ahead and smooth out some of these shadowed areas on the sweater. And then we should be able to move on to dodge and burn. So if we take a look, I was on the color backup layer once again, and I was just pushing some of that color around, and I just smoothed out some of those areas on the sweater there. Now, if I wanted to, I can even come into the texture layer, remove some of these wrinkles. So now I'm on the texture. Let's go into the clone stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and select this texture, and I'm just going to brush this down. Now we got rid of that. Get this texture, brush that over. So of course I can, go all day with this. I can, take my time. If I really needed to smooth out this to be extremely perfect and everything, I could definitely do that. But in this example, I think where I have it now is perfectly fine. If I wanted to, like I said, I could spend a little bit more time, and I probably will. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and reduce some of these over here, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a look at the color layer. Let's see what I was doing there. So if I hit the eyeball, you'll see this is the before and after. Let's kind of look at the stomach area, kind of just smoothing out some of the transitions there. Let's look at the face, zoom in right about here. Before, after. It's not perfect yet. I'm gonna refine it with dodge and burn, of course. And let's look at the sweater now and see what I did just with the color layer, the before and then the after. Look at those transitions on the sweater before and after. Now, let's actually take a look at the whole entire frequency separation before and after. So if I hit the eyeball, let me zoom in at a nice section right there. So this is the overall before and the after. Got the flyaways, we got the blemishes, and now we're gonna be ready for frequency separation. Frequency separation, what am I talking about? I'm gonna be ready for dodge and burn. Oh my gosh. All right, now let's get back into dodge and burn. I'm gonna have dodge and burn selected here. This is the blue section, and I'm gonna go ahead and let's work with my dodge first. So I have my dodge selected, and when I do my dodge and burn, I'm gonna make sure that I have the white brush. I'm gonna have my todo el pedo brush. All it does is just puts my opacity at 75% and 1% flow. That's what works for me. The most important thing when you're doing dodge and burn is the assist layer here. I definitely wanna use this. I'm gonna go to my curves here, my properties, and I am gonna get the hand tool here, and I'm gonna find a bright pixeled area. I'm gonna raise that up, and I'll find maybe like a shadowed area like right here. And I'm gonna work with maybe the forehead first, okay? And of course, you should know this by now, dodge is gonna lighten up the pixels, and then burn is going to darken up the pixels. So I'm gonna work with my dodge first. I'm gonna hit the brush tool. And now I'm simply gonna make sure that I don't zoom in too much. And like I was trying to say, I'm simply just gonna come in here nice and slow and even. I am using my little tablet. Once again, I always get that question on Instagram. And this is just a small gradual process here. I'm always using my left hand on the keyboard so that I can adjust the size of my brush. When I'm working with big areas like this, I'm gonna use a bigger brush. I'm gonna use that to blend it off. I don't wanna stay with a small brush throughout this process, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm obviously focusing on the forehead, and I'm looking for the areas that stand out the most to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and rotate the image upside down. Sometimes rotating it helps out to see some areas. And basically what you're gonna see me do in this step is I'm going to be basically going throughout every part of the image. I'm gonna be adjusting my helper layers depending on what area that I'm working with. Right now I'm just working with the forehead. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset this. And let's take a look at the before and after. So right now I'm on my dodge. Let's hit this eyeball. This is before and then after. Before, after, I'm gonna hit the Alt, click on the layer mask, and you'll see that that's exactly where I've brightened up the pixels. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and move around throughout the rest of the image. I'm gonna go into the cheekbones, above the cheek, the nose, and so forth. And then we'll take a look at the dodge and the burn and see what I've done so far. So now that I'm done with this side of the face, you'll notice here in the shadows, it's a little bit difficult to see what I need to work on. So I'm coming back into my contrast helper layer. I'm gonna reset the curve, and I'm gonna come back to the hand tool. I'm gonna click inside this area that's really dark, and I'm gonna lift it up so that I can see the transitions much better. And right about here, looks good. I'm gonna raise it up some more So I have to emphasize, guys, you're going to be constantly doing this. You're going to be working with different areas. So obviously you need to work with this contrast helper layer. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to continue doing the dodge now on this cheekbone. All right, so let's take a look at the face so far, what I have. I'll go ahead and turn off the assist layers. I'm going to zoom in right about here. And this is the before, and then the after, before, and then the after. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the hand, the stomach, maybe this hand a little bit, then we'll get into the global. All right, so overall, I'm going to look at the dodge and burn so far on the entire body. It's looking good. We are going to get into the global in a moment, and I'm just double checking everything. Let's see what I've done so far in the image. So before and after. Now I'm ready for the global dodge and burn. I'm going to go into my actions, and I want to come into my dodge curves and burn curves. I'm going to add an extra one. So we're going to add an extra one there and a burn. And just to stay organized, I'm going to grab my dodge and burn here. My first set, this is what we call our local, which was, you know, just focusing on the face and so forth. And then the global is where I'm going to make things feel more three-dimensional. So I'm going to go there, global. And what I want to do is I want to go into my dodge. I'm going to get my brush tool. The only difference now is I'm going to increase my flow. And what I want to do is I want to focus on the highlighted areas of the face. So I'm looking at the direction of where I placed my light, where I was sculpting the light. And so what I want to do is I really want to emphasize those and really make them pop. And the same thing with the shadows. So in order to do that, I got to get my flow to about anywhere from 3 to 6. It just depends. On this image, I'm going to start off gradual with my 4% flow. Now here you can look at the catch lights. This tells me where my light was placed. It was on the top left. So this already tells me my light should be brighter up here and coming down into this direction. You can see here I got the triangle right here with the lighting. I'm going to brighten up this area, the nose. I'm going to brighten up the lips, the top part of the chin. And then I'm going to come into the hair as well. And I'm going to go ahead and brighten up some of those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and get my brush tool. And I am going to, now let's go ahead and turn on my assist layer. Maybe that'll help me identify where to do the global. And you can see here, just by turning this on, even if I just have my multiply blend mode set with a flat curve, you'll see that this is the areas that receive the most light. So I'm just going to kind of lift those up ever so slightly. So I'm going to go ahead and select my new dodge. And I'm just going to do bigger clicks here now. All right. I'm not going to get a smaller brush for this, except if I'm working with the nose, of course. But I'm working with bigger areas, and I'm slowly, it's very important that you do this very gradual. Because I'm at that 4% flow, I'm going to do this very gradual. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take off this black and white. If I hit this, you can see things are starting to pop out a little bit more. If I hold Alt here, you'll see that that's exactly where I dodged and burned, right? I was looking at where my light placement was, and I'm simply just elevating those highlights wherever I brush. Now I am going to zoom in to the lips. You'll see that it has that nice gloss right there. I'm going to emphasize that gloss just a little bit more. So I'm simply just going to brush that ever so slightly, and I'm looking for these nice specular highlights that I want to emphasize. So that's what you're going to see me do here. I'm just going to slowly now take my time, and I'm going to find these areas that should have these nice speckled highlights. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the hair. So the difference that I'm going to make here with the hair is I'm going to change the flow to about, you know what, let's go 8. And I'm going to make sure that when I'm doing this, I'm only brushing in the areas of the hair that already have those nice highlights. So I'm going to try to stay away from the shadowed areas. All right, so there is my global dodge. Actually, you know what? Real quick, I'm actually going to just do one little quick swipe of the pants here. The pants over here as well. There we go. All right, so let's look at the dodge. I'm going to hold Alt, and this is the areas, or these are the areas, I should say, that I kind of emphasized and give it a little bit more glow. And if I hit the eyeball, the before and after, you'll see that things are starting to pop a little bit more. Now, if you notice like, oh my gosh, Eli, it looks maybe a little bit too strong, don't worry, don't sweat it. Just come to this opacity. It's always a good idea to drop this opacity down just a little bit, just in case you went a little bit overboard. So I'm gonna drop it down just a little bit more. Let's just be safe here, and let's go down to 85%. All right, if I can get there. I go 85. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the global burn, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to find areas that have the shadows, and I'm going to emphasize the shadows, especially on the cheekbone here. I'm going to emphasize that and kind of like sculpt the face, as well as sculpt some of the areas in the sweater. And I might even reduce, because this stomach area seems a little bit brighter than the face. So I'm going to make sure I tone that down with the global. So I'm going to come in with a brush and then darken that up. So I'm going to go ahead and get my brush. I'm going to make sure that I set it now back to, let's go 3%. And now I'm going to work with my global. All right, let's take a look at the global. I did also go around the image and darken up some areas that I didn't want to highlight. And I also, once again, came into the stomach area. So I'm going to hold Alt. Let's take a look at where I specifically burned. And now let's take a look at the before and after there. So kind of just really sculpting things, really making things pop ever so slightly. Before we move on, I do want to talk about today's video sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives where millions come together to take their next step in their creative journey. Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative people on topics including photography, productivity, business, and more. Make great use of your downtime and check out Skillshare's online classes, which include a combination of video lessons and class projects. The class I plan on watching is Advanced Video Editing with Adobe Premiere Pro by Jordy from Cinecom.net. And what I'm looking forward to in this class is sharpening my pre-existing skills, because I edit my YouTube videos with Adobe Premiere Pro, but I want to get better at it. I want to start applying techniques to make my videos much better. And one of the classes that I already just quickly watched was how to audio mix music and dialogue. And I already was blown away. I saw something called audio ducking, and right away, I'm going to be able to apply that simple technique by watching this one lesson. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to go into the catch lights and actually brush in just a little bit of exposure sometimes, because sometimes the catch lights don't pop out as much as I would want. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse the global, the local, and I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm just going to name this, let's just name it catch lights. And I'm going to zoom in here. And you'll see that the catch lights are there, but maybe I can brighten them up ever so slightly. So what I want to do is I want to get the brush tool. And I'm just going to have a regular white brush. Let's actually go maybe 30% here. And let's go 40% on the opacity, 40-30 here. And what I want to do is I simply want to brush in just a little bit of light back into those catch lights. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm just brushing over where those catch lights were already at. Now, when I do that, of course, it's going to be a little bit too strong. So I want to make sure that when I do this, I'm going to make sure that the opacity drops down at a reasonable number. So, you know, maybe let's go about 40% opacity, 42. And just going to brighten them ever so slightly. So if I zoom out, the catch lights will pop just a little bit more in the image. So let's take a look at what we've done so far. We're going to get into the color grading in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look. This is the before, and this is the after of what we've done just so far with the color grading. The color grading. Man, I'm lost for words today. I'm like thinking ahead and everything today. The skin retouching. So I'm going to come in here at Alt. And there we go. All right. So far, skin retouching looks great. I'm gonna go ahead and collapse everything now. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into the color grading. So on this one, I used 2 layers. So I'm gonna come into my actions. I have this action that, where is it? Right here, color balance shadows. I'm gonna run this action. What's great about this is that it basically selects the subject and masks them out. So now I can only adjust the shadows in the background. So if you look right here, get a preview, you'll see that my shadows, I'm only gonna be manipulating, which you see here, which is in white. The only part I'm gonna color grade is the background. So what I wanna do is I wanna click on this properties, and I'm gonna come into the shadows, because this image is very heavy with the yellows and the oranges. Opposite of that is blue, so I'm gonna add some shadows, bring some blues up in the shadows here. So I'm gonna, if I drag this to right, you'll see that kind of starts to separate things, right? So I'm gonna go about 4 on the shadows, on the blues, and then -2 on the magentas. So that's just a very subtle effect, and it starts to make her pop even more. Now, had I not done this mask, it would have done it to the entire image, all right? So most of my images, I'm using selective color. You would think like, oh my gosh, Eli's not using selective color. I used a lot of curves, or I used 1 curves layer for my color grading. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna go ahead and give you this for free because I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for supporting. So you'll find it in the description. I'm gonna hide it. I'm gonna put it at the very bottom. So those people that never watched this part of the video, you know, where you put the raw file, I'm gonna put the very bottom. So look in the description. I'm gonna put it at the very, very bottom. The loyal people that are watching at this point, you're gonna get it for free. All right. So let's actually set that up. So I'm gonna go to curves here. And once I set this up, what I'm gonna do is I already have a preset saved right here, Ruth YouTube preset. I'm gonna give you guys this for free. And when I apply this, it's gonna add some beautiful richness to the overall image. And if you look at this, you'll see that I brought the midtones and the highlights up just a little bit. I did adjust the greens, or the reds, I lifted that up. The greens, same thing. I created like 2 nodes there, and I have another point that I moved. And then the blues, you'll see that I brought it in to the right, brought down the shadows and so forth. Now, if you're gonna install this, because I'm giving it to y'all, you'll see right here, it says load curves preset. I'm gonna give you guys that. So that's what you guys would do to install it, just FYI, all right? So with that said, if we take a look at this, let's go ahead and zoom in. You'll see that this preset works perfect for golden hour pictures. It just gives it that nice, beautiful pop, adds that nice hint of reds, yellows, and it works great on this specific image. So I've just done minor color grading to this image. And when I'm doing my high-speed sync, especially in golden hour, a lot of the color grading is already done because you have this nice, beautiful light coming through. You have these nice blues in the sky. So a lot of it is already done for me. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to run my raw Vato Loco action. Once again, this is going to merge everything and make it into a smart object. And the reason why I love making it into a smart object is that allows me to go back and make some adjustments. If I make any mistakes, I can go back and tweak it. So you'll see here, it'll have the layer, and right here it says camera raw filter. So when I double click this, now I can go into my camera raw settings, and let's go ahead and let's take a look at the settings that I applied. So I already had saved this. And let's see, Ruth, Sprite, YouTube, perfect. So when I come over here, what you'll notice is I didn't even mess with any of these settings here. All of this is blank. I did bring up my clarity ever so slightly. The curves, I did bring this down ever so slightly. And then here I have my luminance. This is very important, especially when you're working with skin tones. The oranges, luminance basically means I'm gonna brighten up the skin to wherever I feel looks nice. So in this example, I had it set to 4. I'm gonna reduce that if I can get it back. There we go. Then we have greens and aquas. You'll see that I don't have a lot of color in this image. We just have the skin tone, the greens from the image, plus the yellows and the blues. So these are the adjustments I made. Saturation, I brought the skin tone down. I'm actually gonna bring this back to -1, okay? Sometimes when I edit an image again, I'll come back to it and be like, man, why did I adjust that? So this one, -3, I'm gonna actually put it at -1 instead. And then we have hue. I brought the greens to -11. Of course, we have the greens from the sweater there. Then we get into the color grading. You'll see in highlights, I added some blues to kind of cool it off. and I added 6 saturation, and then in the shadows, I added 1. It looks like it's a magenta. So I'm curious as I edit this image a second time, what does it look like if I add more? Ooh, I like that. So we're gonna go about 5 now on this second time that I edit the image, all right? The grain, I did 5 the first time. I actually like more grain lately, so I'm gonna go, and let's go about 8 this time. And then on the calibration, as you can see, I have these adjustments, and I'm shocked that when I did the blue primary, I left it at 0. This is a very important one because when you drag it to the right, it just adds some nice saturation. So I'm actually gonna add about 15 to this image because this is really brings out the color. So I'm kind of surprised that I didn't do that, okay? Now, one of the last things I'm gonna do when I'm here in the camera raw filters, I'm gonna go ahead and graduated filter. I notice that the light is coming in from this direction. I wanna make sure that this side of the image does not get any attention whatsoever. I want all the attention to be on Ruth and also here where the light was hitting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a graduated filter and I'm gonna click and then I'm gonna drag up like this and I'm gonna double check my masking options right here. So it's gonna show me where this mask is being applied and where it's affecting. So essentially what I want to do is I want to make sure that this area is a little bit darker so that the attention doesn't go into that section. So I'm reducing the shadows, the highlights, and that should do it for this section. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out here. And let's take a look once again before and then after. And believe it or not, there's only one more step here, ladies and gentlemen. All I need to do is add a beautiful levels adjustment here. So one of the things that I like to do just to make sure that my luminosity values are where they need to be, I like to add a levels adjustment. So I'm coming into my layers, going to my adjustments, I go to levels, and then I take a look at my levels here. You'll see that it's very push towards the blacks and the shadows. So I want to make sure that my highlights pop a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my highlight slider. I'm going to go ahead and drag this to the left and it's going to brighten up my highlights. So I'm going to just come in about 249 and with just that one adjustment, it's just making the face glow just a little bit more and just making sure that those highlights don't lose some of that luminosity that it needs. So ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the before and after. So I'm gonna zoom in here. Let's go right about here. This is the before and then the after. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more here. Let's go on the face right there. Before, after, and then one last time here. Before, and then the after. And that concludes the tutorial. And if you enjoyed this series, I have over 10 editing tutorials where we do the entire process with raw files. And if you're interested, Eli, what are you doing at the raw level in Capture One? I have editing tutorials for that as well. Also, if you're curious, Eli, how are you even creating these shots? What is high-speed sync? How do you actually set up your shoots? What are your concepts? All of that is on my YouTube channel. As you guys know, I have a bunch of educational content on here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.